Today I'm canning tomato sauce, tomato soup, and tomato juice. And right now I have three varieties of tomatoes coming in my garden. I have red ox hearts. These are a nice big meaty tomato. It's good on a sandwich, but when you try to turn it into sauce, it's more for juice. Um, Here I have Homestead. That's a very good all-around tomato. It's very disease resistant, and that gives you a nice little tomato. That's also very juicy. And then I have San Marzanos, and these are a paste type tomato, and when you run these through the food strainer, you end up with almost all sauce. These are great tomatoes. And rather than trying to do this all separately, I just cut them all up, throw them in a bowl together, and then separate them out into the sauce or the juice or what I want to use for soup. And I'll show you how I do this. I have a Victorio Food Strainer, and this is one of the greatest things ever. In the past, I always used a Foley mill. If you've never seen one of these, you put your tomatoes in here, turn the crank, and then it gets squashed between that piece of metal and the holes in the bottom, and your sauce comes out, and then the seeds and peels stay in here. But the problem is it gets matted up to the point where you have a lot of waste, and you constantly have to clean this little pot out. This food strainer here is far better. It's very easy, very quick, and I'll show you how it works. All you have to do is wash your tomatoes and slice them up into pieces that will fit in the hopper, in the hole there in the hopper. And it has a plunger here that you can push the tomatoes through with. Just trying to feed it down through the hole. And then you turn the crank, and your juice and sauce comes out here, and all of the peels and seeds come out there. You don't have to cook the tomatoes first. You do this raw. It's very quick, very easy. I tried making some tomato juice in my steam juicer the other night, and that didn't work out very well. I wouldn't recommend using the steam juicer for tomato juice. It took about an hour to process about a gallon's worth of tomatoes, and the juice came out clear like water. Well, kind of brownish, like a very weak tea. And it tasted like tomato juice, but it didn't look like it. And it just took too long. And running the stove for like an hour for that small amount of juice, it wasn't worth it. And this here is far better for making the juice. Okay, once I have run the tomatoes through the strainer, I'll put them in the strainer basket and separate the sauce from the juice. You see the juice just comes right out the bottom. Once the juice drains out of this basket, I'll pour the juice into this pot. You see I have tomato juice, and then I'll put the remaining sauce into this pot. That way you don't have to cook your all of this to death to end up with sauce. You end up wasting a lot of your juice doing it that way, so I just strain it out, then I won't have to cook everything very long. And I'll can up the juice to use for when I can pork and beans. You need to use tomato juice with that, so that's why I want tomato juice. You can also use it for vegetable soups, things like that. And then I'll take whatever I don't need and make tomato soup out of it. And the other day I canned some barbecue sauce from the Ball Book recipe, and if you can this, there's something missing with this recipe. I don't know what it is. I haven't had time to compare recipes, but it tastes like ketchup with hot sauce in it. There's something missing. And I also canned some ketchup from the recipe in the Ball Book, and that turned out good. That tastes like ketchup, but the barbecue sauce, it really needs something else. So if you make that one, compare other recipes first and then find out what's missing. I added a little Worcestershire sauce to it, but it still wasn't enough. I thought I would show you the peels and seeds before I throw them out. As you can see, there's not hardly any waste at all using this machine. All of the pulp has been taken out. It's just seeds and peels left. It's a very nice machine. It's called a Victorio Food Strainer. Highly recommend it. Okay, I'm going to can my tomato sauce first. I added a little sugar and salt to the tomato sauce so that it won't be so bitter, but that's entirely a matter of taste. It's optional. I have my jars hot and ready, and I have my lids and rings at a simmer. I'll just take a jar out of the pot. You need to leave a ½ inch head space, but you also need to add a tablespoon of lemon juice to each pint, or 2 tablespoons to each quart. So it's best to stop about before you get full and add enough tomato sauce to get you to ½ inch from the top. And then wipe the rim of the jar. Oh, I just made a mess of that. Take a lid and a ring. And I always heat my rings and my lids. They say you don't have to heat the rings, but when you think about how things expand when they're hot and contract when they're cold, it doesn't make a bit of sense to me to put a cold ring on a hot jar, because the jar will be in an expanded state and the ring would be cold and in a contracted state. And when the lid heats up, it seems to me it would expand and leave you a gap there where the contents could spew out of. So I always use hot jars, hot lids, and hot rings as well. That way everything goes into the canner in a hot and expanded state, and I don't have a lot of failures with my lids because of that. Then after I fill the jar, I put it into the canner so that it'll stay warm until I have all the jars full. I also tightened my lids pretty well. And I know a lot of people have a problem with the tightness of their lids. They say some of you are finger tight in the jars, and you're using cold jars, and then after you've canned your food, you're having a hard time getting those rings off the jars. And then again, it's comes down to the expansion and contraction that I'm talking about. And also, metal and glass doesn't expand and contract at the same rate. And if you don't believe me, look up the coefficient of thermal expansion for metal and glass. And that'll kind of explain what's going on with those canning jars. And it might explain why some of your canning jars are failing if you're having a problem with it. I just found it's a whole lot easier to have everything hot. Okay, all of the jars are full. Now I'm going to drop them down into the water and process them for 35 minutes. And the timing starts once the water comes back to a boil. Okay, I'm starting my tomato soup. I have 4 quarts of tomato juice, 3.5 cups of onions, 2 cups of peppers, and a cup of carrots. It also calls for celery, but I don't have any. 7 bay leaves, a tablespoon of whole cloves, a clove of garlic, a cup of brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm going to move this to the back burner and let it simmer while I finish canning my tomato sauce and start working on the tomato juice. Okay, the time is up. Putting the tomato sauce on a towel on the counter to cool, and as they cool, these lids will seal. And tomorrow I'll remove the rings and wash the jars, and then pile them up over there with everything else I need to put away. Okay, I'm heating my tomato juice, and I have my tomato soup simmering back there. I wish you could smell that. It smells so good. And I'm going to let that cook a little longer, and then I'm going to take the vegetables out and puree them in the blender, and then that will be ready to can. Need to let this come to 190 degrees for 5 minutes, and then I can can that. And I have my jars heating up in the water bath canner, and my lids and rings back there ready to start heating them up as well. Okay, now I'm ready to can the tomato juice, and I'll do it the same way I did the tomato sauce. I'll be ladling the tomato juice into the jars, adding 2 tablespoons of lemon juice for the quart. It would be 1 tablespoon if I was canning a pint. And I'll leave a 1/4 inch headspace on this. Okay, now I need to process the tomato juice for 40 minutes for quarts. It will be 35 minutes for pints. Now I'm going to strain the soup and then take the vegetables and puree them in the blender. want to pick the spices out of here because I don't want those ground up into it. Okay, I pureed the vegetables that were in the soup. Pouring that back in. And as soon as my tomato juice has finished processing, then I'll process the tomato soup. And this has to be processed in the pressure canner. Not the water bath canner, the pressure canner. Okay, now I'm ladling the soup into the jars, and I'm going to leave 1 inch headspace. This is absolutely beautiful. Okay, I've taken the full jars of the soup out of the water bath canner and put them in the pressure canner where they will process for 20 minutes. And I thought I would show you what I'm talking about with the lids coming off easily. Here's a jar of beets that I canned the other day. And see how easily that comes off? You don't have to force it. There's some blueberry pancake syrup. The lids come off with no problem. That's if you use the hot lids, hot rings, hot jars, that's the way they end up. Well, that's it. I canned tomato sauce, tomato juice, and tomato soup, and I had practically no waste at all. It's midnight. I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work. Hope it helps.